From 610 area code. Who's this?
Hey, Sam. This is Michael from PA.
Michael, what's on your mind?
Spoke on Twitter a little bit. I'm the guy who works in campaigns here in Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah. Michael was the one who was giving me the breakdown of what was happening in Pennsylvania in terms of voters that new voters that came out.
So I don't want to correct John a little bit, but I think I have a duty to, because he's looking at the machine counts that come out right after an election. And he's comparing that to the final official counts of the entire 2012 election. I can tell you in Pennsylvania right now, we already have 200,000 more voters than we did in 2012. Our turnout's up. In fact, in the swing states, it's going to be up by around 5%. The idea that we had some sort of Democratic depression, I don't think is really true. The area I work, Lehigh County, Northampton County, went strongly for Trump. And they went strongly for Obama back in 2012. We saw low propensity white voters from both parties who have not voted in the last 10 elections come out and vote for Trump. This was a totally
how do you measure that? How do you measure that? I mean, so voting was up in that county, is what you're saying? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how do you measure that?
We know that because well, first of all, I was looking at the precinct by precinct data on election day. We counted the amount of voters that came in. We looked at the registered voters. We saw that we had 75% plus turnout of all registered voters in some of these precincts. And just so you understand, these are not red areas. These are purple areas. 2 years ago, they voted for Democratic Governor Tom Wolf, 52-48. And this year it was for Trump, 65-35. As far as our field organization, I have to say the Clinton field organization was better than Obama's was. I've been working in campaigns since 2005. We knocked areas that have never been knocked before. The reality is the message of the Hillary campaign made no impact. In fact, she was quite disliked among these white working class Democrats.
So, let me ask you a question. I saw a piece that suggested that some of the get out the vote may have actually helped. Some of Hillary's get out the vote may have actually helped Trump.
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
I agree with that. Not only that, I was running a state.
So how does that
campaign.
work? How does that work? I mean, tell me why. Why do you agree with that?
So when we do a field program, the Obama model was, I'm going to get into internal party stuff because why not? Fuck it. Everybody has multiple different model scores on them. We keep a voter file on every human being in America, basically.
Right.
And we have all sorts of collection of data that's collected both through the private sector, from the party, and from the private sector that's sold to the Democratic Party.
So in other words, let me just explain this to people. You look at Sam Seder, you see, okay, he gets Handyman magazine, but he also subscribes to The Nation, and he also has 2 kids,
correct.
And he also is a member of the Wildlife Defense League. So this guy is like a 9, and we're going to give him a score of 9. Plus, he's voted 2 times, so that puts him up. He's a 9.5. This guy's going to definitely vote, and he's going to vote for the Democrat.
Right. So, when you're at a campaign level, you don't get to see all the underlying data that's in there. It's kind of baked into different models. That is, we're talking about Democratic Party national level with the, Hillary had 50 statisticians working on her campaign. And that was chaired by a PhD faculty-level statistician, and they were taking in all this data and coming up with different scores on everybody. We also have your voter record. So we have, how often you vote, And so everybody gets these kind of scores that are baked in, and they're from 0 to 100. So you'll have people with a a partisanship score of 0 to 100, and then you have what's known as a turnout score of 0 to 100, how likely you are to vote, obviously. What the Obama model was is to find those people that are very high in the partisanship score, so we're saying 70 plus is what's known as the Democratic base. And then looking to drive those people to the polls who have low turnout, say they only turn out between, 30 and 70. Anyone below a 70 is considered to be a low propensity voter. So what we saw was, Hillary went aggressively after those high, partisanship scores. So like a union member, we would think, a union member is a high Democratic propensity. So on the models, they would get a higher partisanship score. And we would actually go and knock their doors because there's labor to labor and all sorts of stuff that happens outside of the Democratic Party that can't coordinate, but is all towards the goal of driving people towards Democratic politicians. And we would knock those doors, and we would be on a sheet for GOTV where it was supposed to be, these are all 100% Democrat voters. So we're not doing any more persuasion anymore. This is just supposed to be our voters, we're certain are our voters, to show up. We'd knock a door, and it'd be 20% Trump voters. That's a disaster.
Yeah.
And so we went through all these things. And, in my state house campaign, the one that I was primarily focused on this time, the guy was in a district that voted for Governor Wolf 2 years ago, and there was a retiring Republican representative, so it was an open seat. And we thought, wow, this is a great opportunity for us, in HGCC and the Pennsylvania State Legislative Committee to pick up a seat. This is a prime target, purple district, right? And the reality is that he outperformed Hillary Clinton by 1,000 votes, but lost anyway by quite a margin.
Wow.
So he was dragged down by
the top
people
of the ticket.
that we thought the top of the ticket, and he massively outperformed her. And in fact, we actually hit our magic number. We come up with an idea of our model turnout.
Right.
We thought he would need this amount of votes to win. We actually exceeded that number of votes.
All right, so
but our opponent.
Let me ask you this.
So into this
well, no. This is good,
detail,
but I want to know: do you then go back and look at the way your partisan index is configured? Because is there a data point in that partisan index that is actually indicative of hey man, we went back to this, and everybody who subscribes to Family Handyman, it turns out they voted Trump, or something like that. I mean, is there that data point? Can you get that granular with it?
So the answer to that is survey responses, which is when field organizers or volunteers go to a door and knock and talk to the person, which is known as a voter contact. They get an answer about who they're voting for. And then so we mark that down, and all that data is folded back in the system. So if we got someone who we think was hundreds are hundreds. I've never met 100 who wasn't voting for a Democrat. But say he was a 70 and he says Trump, that's going to fold in, and the next time around, it's going to, that's not something a campaign does. We don't work on the model because honestly, that is something that's done at the PhD level, not done at the actual campaign level.
Right.
And that's what Obama's field program. People talk about his campaign being amazing. He turned his grassroots energy and used quote unquote science, cutting edge statistical stuff to try to leverage that. I don't think the idea that it was a Democratic base thing. First of all, I agree that a lot of Democratic base were not enthused for Hillary. I agree with that 100%. I mean, we saw third-party votes went up 400% in Pennsylvania, which was greater than the margin between Trump and Hillary. Now, I can't say that all those people would have voted for Hillary over Trump, but when Gary Johnson goes from 50,000 votes to 300,000 votes, and the margin is 120,000 votes,
right.
I think pretty clearly those people were probably Obama supporters.
Right.
And in Philadelphia, we were only down 5,000 votes out of the Philadelphia area from the machine count, not even going into the official canvassing, which hasn't been done yet.
So
and
a lot of people voted in Philadelphia area, in other words.
Yes.
People came out in the Philadelphia. Did
Hillary Hillary did worse than Obama, of course. I think everybody expected that, a little bit of a drop. But, she's already 1 million votes ahead of Mitt Romney right now nationwide. We probably have another 4 or 5 million votes in California alone, and there's probably 80,000 or 800,000 in Arizona. There's probably 1 million in Washington and Oregon. I mean, I think turnout as far as raw votes, I think is already up 0.5% over 2012.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to make 2008 numbers, but
so do you think we'll ever know?
The turnout was not down. Is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Everybody's getting this wrong, by the way.
I
Everybody's getting this wrong. It's pissing me off because it's like you guys are missing what actually happened.
Why do you think the vote went down? I'm sorry.
He's joking. No. So wait a second. So let me just be clear. Do you think we'll ever know what that factor was that was wrong in that partisan index?
So, I
mean, because it could show up everybody in that. I mean, I don't think it will, but I'm just saying to illustrate this, people, it could show up that partisan index was incorrect or at least irrelevant in the context of this election because the guys who get He-Man Women Haters magazine for whatever reason was still aligned with the guy getting The Nation magazine and whatnot. I mean, just as one example, that it was misogyny, or it could be like that partisan index is just that they thought that she was corrupt, or they thought that she was a liar, or they thought that she wasn't going to provide jobs and Trump was. I mean, we don't know, right?
And also, let's be real. I mean, I don't want to say racism, but I've knocked. I'm not even a fuel guy. In the last 3 elections, I've knocked 20,000 doors. I do finance, and because part of the Democratic Party is when we're done, when we're out of the finance part, you get out on the door yourself. That's
right.
what the Democratic Party is all about. And the reality is that a lot of Trump's message about, first of all, the idea of welfare, the welfare queen messaging that is decades old penetrates, and the idea that welfare is going to people not like me. I'm being screwed, and the government doesn't help people like me. And Donald Trump, we all know, is a con man. But, you and I went to law school.
Well, why did that resonate with Trump against? Why did that resonate with Trump against a woman where when Romney was, takers and makers saying this against Obama and it didn't resonate?
Well, that's a great point because, and I think Michael Moore has a great point about this. Mitt Romney was literally the guy who fired them.
Right. Okay.
And Obama did a good job of making sure people know that,
right.
with, for example, in Michigan, he went after.
Right. No, I mean, I think that's,
Romney
I mean, I think
about the auto industry.
Yes. They never went after Donald Trump in anything other than being a moral monster, as opposed to he's a plutocrat. And part of that was maybe it was hard for her to do that.
They did, but it was weak sauce.
Well, it was weak sauce because, she couldn't push it too much. They probably were defensive about it.
Of course, you would look at the media. I mean, honestly, I think the media, I hate to be the guy going, the media, but they talked about her emails for a year. And, you can look at all the studies done of media coverage, and it's not talking about policy.
Right.
And if they did talk about policy, it was from Donald Trump. Every speech he ever did was unfiltered to the voters.
Right.
And, how many times would you turn on MSNBC and there'd be an empty Trump podium?
Yes, but to be fair, that during the primary we heard about policy, and that was because Bernie was driving it, and she did not make it about policy. She didn't. Maybe the surrogates did, but Clinton did not, and to the extent that she did, she made it too late. She could have made it much more about policy in the debates. And the way, again, I mean, I'm like a broken record on this, but the way you make it more about policy is you tie him to Paul Ryan's policies. If you can't pin him down on a policy, you tie him to Paul Ryan's policies and make Paul Ryan argue whether or not Trump subscribes to him. And they never did that.
Sam, to push back a little bit to you, is think about when she was doing the best in the polls, and we can talk about why the polls are wrong next if you want, but she was doing best when there was no media filter. It was the convention. It was the debates.
Well, that's what I'm saying. She could have done it in the debates.
Him talking policy, they were doing great. And, she could have done better in the debates.
No. But
when the
I'm saying doing different. I think she did fine in the debates. But in the debates, everything she said stayed right there. But if you make a controversy by making him subscribe to a set of policies, whether he does or does not, but that are certainly arguably going to be enacted if you have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, and we're going to see them all right now, actually. They specifically did not do that. I mean, we know from the WikiLeaks things. To me, one of the most insightful thing about the campaign was the DNC themselves complaining that she would not, that she herself was cleaving off Paul Ryan. And when she gives Paul Ryan that break, she's giving Donald Trump that break too. Because Paul Ryan, if he's drowning because of Donald Trump, he's either got to cut bait or he's got to bring Donald Trump down with him. And that whole front in the war was just excused. And I have theories on why that was too. But, I mean...
One more thing about the polling, and we can, because people are like, why was the polling wrong? Well, there's something known as a likely voter screen, which people talk about, but they don't really know what it is. And there are two primary ways of doing it. There's one way of saying, how likely are you to vote? And there's 5 answers, and one of them's like, I always vote. The second one is, I will almost certainly vote, and then I will probably vote, and something to that effect. If you don't say, I'm almost certain to vote or above, you're immediately dropped. And those were and then there is more sophisticated ways of doing it, where they model people and they ask them questions like, do you know where your polling place?
Right.
Have you voted before? And they come up with a score. And if you don't pass the score, oftentimes they will take your answers, but then they will weight them or drop them. And I can tell you, just looking at the actual voter data from DNC level individual voters, these people did not pass likely voter screens.
Right. Obviously.
They were considered low propensity voters. And Trump, there is such a thing as a Trump voter, and it is real. And the sooner the Democratic Party realizes that, the better off they're going to be. Because
the question too is
saying it was all Hillary Clinton is missing the point that we are actually in deep shit right now, and we better come up with a message that resonates with these people, because demographically, they're white, non-college educated voters are voting like they're from Alabama, and they never did that before. And just 2 years ago, they went for Tom Wolf, or it was close, and Tom Wolf did very well in a lot of these same rural counties.
But it's not like they're voting. They're from Alabama. It's that the Alabamans are showing up. I mean, these are the hidden white voters that
Sure, you could say that too.
I accept that. I thought that was bunk.
To be honest.
Well, wait.
And here's the thing. Like,
okay.
I don't know if I agree with that. Like,
they're just flipping from. They're flipping.
Well, so like they don't believe the Democratic Party supports them anymore.
Okay.
Like.
I mean, that's the contention, right?
Valley,
I mean, that's the bone of contention, because I got to go because we got to wrap up because I got a pre-tape. But
sorry, Sam.
But no. This is great. I really appreciate you calling in. This is really interesting, and I think it's really important for people to hear this. But the bone of the question is now is like, what are they? I mean, because if they're low propensity and they haven't been out in 2 elections, right? They didn't vote for Obama before. Right? I mean, that's the hidden white vote question. And because it sounds like it's a little bit of both. It's some people who voted for Obama.
But you're considered a low propensity vote if you voted in 2008 but didn't vote in 2012. You're considered low propensity.
Okay. So they were voting for Obama, in 2008, but they didn't show up in 2012. Even still, I think there's still an issue. And so the question is like, what... When we say that there are a specific Trump voter, and not just that Clinton underperformed, but there are specific Trump voters, we still...
Which she did, a little bit.
Right. But we still don't...
Compared to Obama, but Obama's Obama.
We still...
if she was running against Mitt Romney, she would have won.
We still don't know if that Trump voter, what it is about that Trump voter. We just don't know what it is about that Trump voter, right? We don't know if they're reacting to.
I suspect things.
All right, give me one. Your bullet point on the suspecting.
Well, I honestly think that a lot of the white nationalism really resonated. And I know that's scary to hear, but I think that, just my experience is the concept of they're coming over here, the system is rigged against us, and the anti-elite, but also anti-other sentiment. I mean, this is a 93% white area that voted for Democrats, where I'm at right now, and went strongly for Trump. And the difference between Trump and Romney is the white nationalism. And I think for the non-college educated white voters in rural and suburban Pennsylvania, there's a lot of, they want to blame someone. Scapegoating is older than the Bible. And it's a scary, scary reality. But they are atomized. They are alienated. They have no economic prospects. And the Democratic Party has left them behind. 1995 was the last pour of Bethlehem Steel here in the Lehigh Valley. Now, who was president?
Right.
We got to face the facts that those blue-collar union voters don't feel that the Obama Democratic Party, and he lost 1,000 legislative seats on the state level. I don't know how he escaped with not taking any blame for this. I mean, Hillary Clinton's easy to blame and easy to dislike for a million reasons. I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan, supported Bernie, campaigned for Bernie, but, Obama was president
Right.
during the complete and utter defeat of the Democratic Party, and we are on the ropes. So I'm scared. I mean, and I don't mean to panic people, but just to say you got to get ready for the worst. And I don't know what's going to happen in 4 years. We have to fight, and we have to make sure that we have a credible message that hits these people. And I do think we are going to be mobilized. I am optimistic. I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg can last 4 more years.
Is this DNC, Zach? Is that you? You're so on point, man.
Nope.
All right. Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
This is totally DNC, Zach.
Thanks for the call.
I'll send you a hacky sack if you want
I
it,
wish
man.
it was.
Right.
But, I will take that hacky sack.
Yeah. Can I get some help, man?
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate the call.
Thanks, man.
All right. Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Over. Subscribe.